The Tau Empire makes use of many Xenos races as auxiliaries, and among those are even some humans. I'm no stranger to kitbashing these Tau Auxiliaries, and when Games Workshop sent me the new stealth suits in the Dead Silence Kill Team expansion, I knew that they would be the perfect candidates for some auxiliary kitbashing. So join me as I build the warp-sensitive abhumans known as the Glistening Gold. I began with the new Tau stealth suit kit, and from this I removed the parts required to build the torso, waist, head and jump pack for one of the suits. After removing, the parts were then cleaned up with their sprue tabs and mold lines. With my parts prepped, my first aim was to separate the torso piece of the Tau stealth suit in order to use it on a different set of legs. The torso itself was made from two halves, but there is also a small plate attached to the waist. To make the full torso, this needed to be clipped away from the waist. Once the Tau marks plate had been removed, I cleaned up the cut and trimmed away any excess as necessary. Once this was done, I then assembled the torso. For the legs, I settled on the Askurgan Trueblades. My idea for this race of abhumans was that they were tall and slender, possibly hailing from a lower gravity world. This meant that the long limbs of the Askurgan vampires were ideal. They also shared that medieval Japanese styling with the Tau. After doing a quick dry fit of the parts against the battlesuit torso, I realized that my cut would need to be just above the corded belt. After removing the torso from the robes, I assembled the various pieces before comparing again against that stealth suit armor. This revealed further cuts that needed to be made. After several rounds of trimming and shaving, the torso and legs were finally glued together. With my torso and legs in place, I could focus on the head. To start with, I grabbed one of the stealth suit heads, but instead of using this as a head, I planned on repurposing it to extend the torso armor. This would not only change the silhouette of the armor a little, but it would also help to heighten the torso further. To achieve this, I clipped down the neck from beneath the armor plating. Once it was clipped away, I trimmed down the underside until it could fit snugly against the torso, but I didn't glue the collar just yet. Instead, I shifted my attention to the head. As I was going for an abhuman auxiliary, I needed something that still looked humanoid, but was starting to lean into that uncanny, almost alien look. The Delaque miniatures from Necromunda are perfect for this, especially the Psykers, which is where this particular head came from. The third central eye being a perfect nod to their warp sensitivity. Now, in order to mount this to the collar, I needed to heavily trim down the neck and remove the cables emanating from the scalp. After several comparisons and adjustments, the head was glued to the collar before the collar was attached to the torso. But I was still left with a gap just behind the head and the edge of the armor, which I would fill in with some cabling. For these cables, I decided to use some of Zinge Industries 1mm flexible cables. After cutting down to size, they were superglued between the head and the armor, creating the appearance of some sensors or augmetics to help the Tau forces tap into the abhuman senses. Continuing with the elongated limbs, I also used the Askurgan Trueblades kit for the abhuman's arms. I did, however, have to remove the blades, as I felt this auxiliary would be occupying more of a support role and so wouldn't need the armaments. After carefully trimming and cutting away the blades, I then compared the arms against the torso. They mostly fit already, but a few adjustments were made to ensure that I had some decent posing. Once they were adjusted and glued, I also attached the original stealth suit shoulder pads to finish off the bulk of the model. All that was left now were a few minor details. The first of these were a Tau Pathfinder antenna that I glued to the collar, followed by some Fire Warrior pouches that I mounted to the belt. To accompany the Glistening Gold, I also decided to assemble a simple drone from parts found in the stealth suit kit. Using the sensor array from the chasse ray and the muzzle from the burst cannon, I had a very straightforward mini drone. For the base, I kept things quite simple. I decided to mount the model onto a 40mm base in order to match the Ethereal, who this model would make a good proxy for. To help make it a little more interesting though, I tore up some chunks of cork floor tile and superglued them into a rough, rocky outcrop before gluing the abhuman onto a smaller, temporary base for painting. Last year, I released my first plastic kit, Dead Animal Bits, and since that kit was first released, I've been working hard on a second. Well, that kit is finally here. Sorcerer's Spoils, as the name suggests, is full of everything you'd find in a wizard study. Books, scrolls, parchment, candles, potion bottles, and much more. It even has a cauldron with an optional bubbling surface. Once again, I've teamed up with Wargames Atlantic to produce a box that is brimming with 330 hard plastic components. They're not Cyocast, resin, or 3D printed. They come on a sprue. They're simple to clean and modify and can be assembled with plastic glue, making them incredibly easy to kitbash and convert your models with. Thanks to your fantastic support of my last kit, I've been able to use the profits from the Dead Animal Bits kit to fund the development of Sorcerer's Spoils, which means that the kit is currently available to pre-order right now over on my web store, with the aim to start shipping in November. That's right, there is no lengthy crowdfunding this time around. And as a thank you for all of your support, I have a special discount for anyone who picks up the kit during the pre-order period. Head on over to the SparePartsEmporium.com and use the code BITS for the BITS box at checkout to get 10% off boxes of Dead Animal Bits and Sorcerer's Spoils. And keep an eye out for some conversions that I'll be doing with these. When it came to painting, I decided to go with the Viola colours, and I began with an initial black primer. Now, painting something that should be white with a black base coat might seem odd, but it would give me some deep shading in the recesses and also a good starting point for some of the dark cloth of the robes. Now, to build up that white, I chose to start by mixing together some of Tamiya's XF82 Ocean Grey 2 along with some Tamiya thinner in my airbrush. I sprayed this onto the armour from a high angle, so that the paint mainly fell onto the upper surfaces and left some of that original black just peeking through on those downward facing surfaces. Next, I then mixed up a similar consistency of Tamiya XF2 flat white and some thinners into my airbrush. Like before, my application came from above the parts, focusing mainly onto the most prominent points by making a few light passes. Each layer subtly built up the intensity of the white, resulting in a smoother transition and texture. With the armor color achieved, I then switched to some regular brush applied base coats, and for the first of these I used some Death Reaper from the Tooth and Coats range. I used this very dark grey to paint just the dark cloth of the robes. For the details across the armor, such as the pipes, mask, Tau symbol and other small details, I instead applied a base coat of Doom Death Black. By slightly varying these shades, it would help to differentiate the materials. To paint the small amount of metallic details on the model, such as the discs on the pack, the jewelry and the thigh armor, I began with Heirloom Gold. Before I switched my focus towards the red details, these included the cord belt, the Tau symbol on the chest, and the bindings of the thigh armor. As this was an abhuman, I decided that the skin needed to be something not too far from what you'd see on a person, but with just a hint of the unusual. I decided this touch of unusual would be a darker skin tone with a slightly purple hue. This effect was started off by mixing together some Barbarian Brawn with Amethyst Rayne before coating the exposed skin areas. My final base coat was to the rocks on the base, and in order to create a mossy appearance, I tackled them with a layer of Fury Green. With all the base coats complete, I next added a couple of washes to help darken down the recesses and create some shading effects. The first of these was created by mixing together some Cygor Brown contrast paint and some airbrush thinner. This resulted in quite a watery mixture that still retained a strong pigment. This allowed me to easily apply the wash directly into the recesses of the white armor, allowing me to achieve some strong recess shading without staining the surfaces too much. After adding a little depth to the recesses, I continued to apply my wash across the other areas of the model. This included the metallic and red details, along with the rocks on the base. For the skin, I settled on some Magi purple wash to complement that purple hue I was trying to create. With the washes in place, I began the process of lining the edges of the models to create some highlights. For the armor, I returned to my original base coat of XF2. The airbrushing had achieved a slightly darker tone due to my light application, so this white edge highlight stood out against it. To highlight the robes, I picked out the sharp folds and creases with some lines of Dungeonstone Grey, before continuing with an extreme highlight of Wizard Grey. This lighter paint was then carefully dotted onto just the sharp points and corners of the robes. To help further differentiate the dark robes and the remaining black details of the model, I decided to use a highlight of Cold Corpse Blue. This gave those black areas in the armor a very slight blue tone. The cold corpse blue was then followed up with a few small dots of the lighter wolf grey. Across the metallic details, I used some glistening gold, before switching to the red details. For the first highlight, I used demon red, followed by some spots of Fanatic Orange. When it came to the skin, I shifted gears a little and approached things slightly differently. I first applied a layer of Barbarian Brawn, leaving the original base coat still visible in the recesses. I'd recommend thinning your paint a little more than normal here, as that will help you to create some smoother, less abrupt transitions. With the Barbarian Brawn slightly lightening the skin, I continued with my usual highlights, starting with Dwarven Skin, followed by some small spots of Elven Skin. This left me with a bit purple but still humanish tone I was looking for. With the highlights complete, I then focused on some of the glowing details by applying a base coat of Ray Gun Glow. These included the 3 eyes of the Delaque Psy-Gheists and then 3 lenses of the drone. Don't worry about overspill here either, this will just create the effect of a light glow. To highlight the center of these lenses, I applied a small dot of Ray Gun Glow mixed with some XF2. This completed the model for the time being, allowing me to turn my attention back to the base. To build upon the green of the rock, I began applying some dry brushing using some Wizard Grey over the top. This caused the paint to just accumulate onto the edges and details, keeping the interior sections as that original green. The dry brushing was continued with some Carcharadon Grey. This time my application was much lighter so the paint only accumulated onto the most prominent details. To fill in the remaining gaps around the base, I used some texture paint from AK, specifically some of their Dark Earth. I spooned this quite thickly across the edges of the base and between the rocks. Don't worry about getting an even coat either, the result will just be more realistic. After allowing the texture paste to dry fully, I then hit the surface with an unevenly placed coat of Orc Flesh Wash, followed by some Oblivion Black Wash. Like with the earlier washes, it helped to darken the recesses, and the mixture of colours also gave it more of a natural appearance. And with that, the painting was complete, and I was able to make my final few touches. This included cleaning up the base rim with a black acrylic marker, applying a coat of matte varnish to protect the paintwork, and then assembling the various parts together. Be sure to scrape clean your contact points to ensure a stronger fit. For the drone, I used a clear acrylic flying stand that was cut down in height. A space among the rocks was cleared and the 3 parts were superglued together. I then finished off the model with a few tufts of moss and grass, which left me with this. So that was how I built the warp-sensitive abhuman Tau Auxiliaries known as the Delaque Psy-Gheists, or Cold Shadow Humans. I envisioned this particular group to be employed by the Tau to act as an early warning system against warp-based incursions. While they're not full-on Psykers, they are capable enough to sense the ebbs and flows of the warp and real space. Usually they are found on board Tau fleets, but some are deployed against enemies that are known to employ warp-based teleportation. Here, they use modified XV-25 battlesuits that incorporate various comms and sensor suites to help the Tau monitor what the Delaque Psy-Gheists is sensing. The suits also feature a light repulsor system to compensate against the Auxiliaries' susceptibility of higher gravity worlds. Now, if you enjoyed this video, then be sure to check out my previous Tau Auxiliary builds, and be sure to let me know what ideas you might have for some custom allies. You will also find all the kits and paints used in this video down in the description below, along with some affiliates links. But before we go, let me say a huge thank you to everyone who continues to help keep the channel going. And if you would like to help support me too, you can get early access to ad-free videos, exclusive merchandise, and even your name in the credits. Simply follow my Patreon link below or hit the join button, just like my top Patreon supporters did, who are Andrew Marston, Banyevrian, Berserker, Dakota Kaburi, Daniel Dowling, George Consini Roberts, Immaterial Creations, Cornbread, Little Templar, Maciej Savitsky, Matt's Mini Minute, Sam Sepulveda, Swedsman, Tim, and Zeth27. And my top channel members, who are Andrew Chell, Bon Johnson, Chris Toomey, Daniel Reese, Dave, Doug H, Dwarf of War, John Gibbs, Mark Taylor, Misa Pogon, Nerdington Paints, Patrick K, Philip Poyer, Ryan O'Shaughnessy, S.O., S.J. Carper, Stowbox, The Sire Acquired, and Whale Tussler. So until next time, thanks for watching, and goodbye.